We're here today with Oreoluwa Somolu, founder of Women's Technology Empowerment Center. Thank you so much for making the time to meet with us.
Thank you.
Can I call you Ore?
Yes.
I heard you introducing yourself like that.
All right, perfect.
Cool, thank you for making the time, Ore. So let's just start with talking about what exactly is Women's Technology Empowerment Center and what you're trying to achieve with this organization.
Okay, so Women's Technology Empowerment Center, we call it W.TEC for short. It's a non-profit organization based here in Lagos, and our goal is to raise the next generation of women, technology entrepreneurs, leaders, and developers.
And how do you do that?
All right, so we do that in a number of ways. We run camps, technology and science camps during the holidays. So over this long holiday, we've had about 4 camps for girls between the ages of 13 to 17 years. And what we're trying to do with those camps within a period of 2 weeks is to basically introduce different technology and engineering-based concepts to the girls in a very fun and engaging ways. Having them create, build different tools and solutions so that they can actually relate technology, engineering, and science to real life. Because a lot of times when they're learning these things in school, it's just basically like school, you know, and they don't always make the connection to their real life and solving problems. So that's what we do with that. We bring girls from different parts of the country. Some camps are day camps, so they come in the morning and they leave in the afternoon. And then we have one that is residential. And so for the 2-week duration of the camp, they're boarding in the camp venue, and they're learning and they're having fun. So we have that. We started the camp in 2008. So this year we had the 12th edition of the camp. Then from that, we had the idea of after-school clubs, because the camps, they're great at inspiring the girls, but then what happens after that? That was always the big question, you know, from the parents, like, she learns so much, she's so excited, now what? So we decided to set up clubs in some schools. So once a week, the girls have the opportunity to keep learning some of the things that they were learning in the camp. So in our after-school clubs, we're doing things like robotics, programming, creating mobile applications, website design, you know, those kinds of things. So, yeah, so that they can really understand, you know, and build their confidence and experience over the course of an academic year. So that's from September of one year to June of the following year. So those are the 2 major programs we have for girls. We also we piloted a mentoring program, so we're trying to encourage girls to think about and study science, technology, engineering related courses in university. But we find that the girls that do go on to study those courses, a lot of times they feel isolated, because they're usually one of maybe 4 women in a class, maybe of 100 guys, you know, and so there is that isolation that comes from there. And then a lot of times people are like looking at them like, are you sure you're in the right place? You know, like, you know, the marketing department is down the corridor, you know, and so there are a lot of girls who also feel not very secure, you know, in these environments. And I think also because of the way girls and boys are, there are lots of girls who are very smart, but they may not necessarily have the confidence or the voice, you know, to stand up and, you know, maybe speak in class, even when they're not completely sure. So we would find like girls dropping out, you know, after they had started their degree, or they would complete the degree, but then they wouldn't practice afterwards. So we started a mentoring program where we would match the girls with a woman working in whatever field they're studying. So maybe a computer science student with a woman who's working in, you know, maybe computer science or as a software developer or engineer. And so at least they could develop, you know, those other skills that would actually help them to succeed and thrive in their degree and prepare them for the workplace.
I'm very curious. Where do you think that comes from per se? Because, for example, my sister studied civil engineering in a university, and there were only 3 girls out of 150 students. So do you, where do you think that comes from? That because, for example, I have no interest in science, like it's just not a passion that I have. Do you think that that is as a result of society, or do you think that it's also possible that it's just not like my personality or my passion or my thing?
Okay, so when we started our work with W.TEC and we would meet with the press, we'd organize like courtesy calls to different newspapers, and then I'd be invited to conferences to speak, and I spoke about what we were doing. And people would, initially at that time, there really wasn't much of an awareness of the gender gap in the STEM field. And then even when we pointed it out, like, oh, look at maybe the IT department in your office. How many women are there? How many guys are there? Look at maybe an oil and gas company. Look at the engineers. How many women engineers are there? How many male engineers are there? Then people would start to think like, oh, well, actually, yeah, it's true. There aren't a lot of women in these fields. Then they would go to say, oh, well, maybe it's because the women are not interested in these courses. That's why. And, then I would challenge them and say, in school, I went to an all-girls school. So, I didn't, interact with a lot of guys, but I know like in the science subjects, in chemistry, physics, even maths, further maths, girls were excelling. And then you look at like school results, like university entrance results, or even like, so here we call it SSC, Senior School Certificate Exams. Girls would do brilliantly. So I would tell them, can you correlate that? Like girls getting like A's, in the science subjects, in school, and then all of a sudden they're not going on to study these fields. Do you think it's because the girls really are not, able, they're not, smart enough? And then they would say, well, okay, maybe not. The truth is society has so much to do with it. Number one, a lot of girls are told that, the sciences are for guys. They may be told, in a very subtle way, or they may be told in a very explicit way, like, you're a girl, you can't study that, that's for guys, or you can't be an engineer, it's too demanding, the hours are too long, or, or you'll be surrounded by guys all the time, or you have to lift heavy equipment. Those are kinds of things that a lot of girls hear, and it really puts them off. Here, I would say that, the conservative lifestyle, the ideal lifestyle, I should say, of a girl goes to school, she graduates, from university, then she gets married and, has her children. That's like the ideal life. So anything that is going to, disturb that is almost like a no-no. So with engineering, a lot of engineering courses are 5 years as opposed to 4 years. So some parents will instantly say, 5 years. By the time you graduate, all your classmates would have started working, you'll be left behind, you won't find any man to marry you. And if you're too smart, and if you're working around guys, no man is going to want to marry you. And because marriage is a big deal, a lot of girls are like, okay, maybe this is not the right field for me. So I think society has so much to do with it. And it's just, over the last few years that we're starting to realize how much so. So we always advocate that parents, don't pass on those kind of messages to their daughters and even to their sons as well, so that their daughters can grow up, feeling that truly they can do anything they want to. As long as they have the aptitude for it. We also encourage that, at home, don't buy like, just dolls, kitchen sets for your daughters, then buy your sons like, cars and robots and those things where they get to build, because even that experience you have as a child, helps you develop the skills as you get older. So if all you get, for toys are dolls and kitchen sets, then you're going to grow up thinking that, okay, that's what I meant to do in life, to look after people and to cook and clean. And then if you get things like cars and robots, you're taking them apart, putting them back together, then you start to think that, okay, this is something that I can do. So I think that, yeah, society has so much to do with it.
How do you open up this conversation with, for example, the parents and also with the girls? You've mentioned like the camps and the clubs. I'm sure that you're teaching them like the technical skills, but do you also open up this kind of conversation?
Yeah. Okay. So in the camp, we do teach them the technical skills. Yeah. We also invite women working in different STEM fields to come and talk to the girls. So they actually get to, find out what a typical day is like, what the work is like, because it's easy to say, being a doctor sounds very interesting. But then when you actually understand, what it entails, then you can start to assess whether this might be a good fit for you. So we do that. And then we go on excursions as well. So we try to pick different companies where the girls can go. They can actually see the work being done. So this year we went to a radio and TV station. Last year we went to Andela, the software talent development company. We also went to a renewable energy company as well. We've been to telecoms companies. So we try to go to different places so that they can get a sense of what the work is like. Then on the graduation, the girls present the things that they have learned at the camp. So they talk about the places they visited. They talk about the different women who came to speak, the careers that they learned about. They share some of the technical skills that, that they learned. They develop projects. So this year we had the girls build different things. They had sessions on electronics and digital circuitry. So they actually built, they put together like circuits. They were creating like street lights, indicators for water tanks. So if the water goes below a certain level, a light goes off or an alarm goes off, those kind of practical things. And so we had a demo and the parents came and they walked around and they were like, my daughter did this. Okay, wow, okay, in 2 weeks, wow. So that is number one enlightenment for their parents, because they're like, okay, so my daughter can do this. And for some of them it was shocking, because maybe their daughter up till then had not shown any interest in maybe anything science related. And they're like, okay, so she has this hidden talents, or aptitude I didn't know about. And then we speak to them during the graduation that, your daughters can do anything, that you have seen the things that she's been able to do during her time with us. Imagine what she'll be able to do if she gets support from you as she goes back to school. And we encourage them to support their daughters in whatever way. So finding additional classes, whether that's through a W.TEC or other organizations that may be offering like a boot camp, a class, a workshop. And then there are always like competitions, hackathons. We encourage them to participate, even if they don't feel, experienced enough. You get experience from doing anyway. And we try to encourage them that, no one expects you to be perfect. So we speak to the daughters and we speak to the parents as well. And then we try to follow up as best as we can. So we have the girls they become part of our alumni network, and they were always sharing with them other resources, opportunities that they may be interested in. And sometimes we're also invited to conferences and asked to showcase some of the things we're doing. So we invite some of our beneficiaries along to also demo some of their projects.
So you've mentioned that you're now preparing for the 12th edition of the camp. And in comparison to when you first started, like with the first camp, what kind of progress can you share with us?
Okay, all right. So our 12th camp season is underway. So far we've completed 2 camps, 2 in Lagos, and right now we have 2 going on outside of Lagos, 1 in Anambra State and 1 in Kwara State. So I would say, number one difference is we have more girls now. We have more locations because there's just more of a need for it. And we've identified partners with whom we can work with in different parts of the country. But really major change or evolution, I guess, has been the curriculum. When we started, it was all about just learning to use like basic technology, like basic digital literacy, turning on the computer, turning it off, understanding, okay, these are the windows, this is the file, this is the folder, this is how you open a document, you create a Word document, you type, you format. That's where we were, 12 years ago, 11 years ago. But now we're building things, we're creating things, we're opening up like a computer or a phone, we're putting them back together. Yeah, so it's more, there's more of the focus is on building and creating, because now things have moved, more people are comfortable using, a lot of these tools. And what we really want the girls to be empowered with is that knowledge that I can do this. So even we teach them, how to put apart a computer, put it back together. But even with the confidence they get, they can go on and do anything, even if it's something we haven't taught them, because, they've done something similar and they were able to do it. And they figure, okay, so I can always teach myself, I can learn, or I can ask, I can go for classes. So yeah. So I would say the curriculum, that has been a major, change.
By the way, are all the trainers, are they women as well?
We would love that, but unfortunately, no. When we started, yes, we were all the trainers were women, because I used to train a lot. Now the organization has gotten a bit bigger, so we need more hands. And so we recruit from universities, and especially young people who are kind of in between stages of their lives. So they finish secondary school and then they're trying to get admission to university. And here in Nigeria, that can take a while. You could be at home for like sometimes a year. So we train them, and then they now, they train, the girls. So we have young men and young women. Then we also invite our alumni as well. So girls who have passed through our camp also come back and work as trainers, yeah.
Okay, and because when they are learning, it's a very sort of controlled environment that's very safe for them, and they're able to build up that confidence. So does that then spread into like when they leave the classroom? Or have you been able to find out or evaluate that somehow?
Yes, okay. So we take our evaluation quite seriously. So we have the pre, we have the post, and then we have follow-ups afterwards. So 6 months after the program has ended, we do follow-up interviews with the girls. We find out if they're still using the skills, they learned, if so, how, if not, why, have they shared their skills with anyone? That's always something that we want to know, and the girls usually have. So from our stats, we found out that at least 82% of our alumni were inspired to want to study a STEM related degree. Not all of them will, because not all of them may get admission to university to do that. So far we've had about 24% of our alumni who are either studying a STEM degree or have graduated. So, we're kind of getting there, but virtually all the girls have shared their knowledge with somebody else, whether it's their sister, their friend, their classmates. Some even help to set up like the computer classes in their school. So we had some girls who were going to schools where they didn't have computers, and they didn't have a computer lab. And then maybe by the time they got back to school, they wanted to actually set up, start teaching, computer science. And because they had attended this camp, they were actually able to support the teacher in the class. We had another school where we were running our after school club. And before we got there, they also were not running any computer science classes, and they didn't have any computers in the whole school. But then because the girls attended our after school clubs and then also our camps as well, they were now interested in taking computer science as a class. And so the school actually had to make a request for computers for the school, because they had to accommodate these girls. So I think there were just like 3 girls who were taking the computer science class, so they requested for 3 computers. So those were the first computers that the school had. So little things like that, it may seem like a little drop here, a little drop there, but it's progress.
And where did your interest in technology and STEM and so on start?
Okay, so yes, very interesting, because I didn't study anything STEM related for my undergrad. My parents are both engineers, actually. My dad, an electrical engineer, my mom a civil engineer. So, growing up in our household, it was all about the sciences and the maths. Those were the subjects my parents cared about. If you got like 100% in English, whatever. Like, what's that? But your maths, and luckily, I mean, I was good in maths and, very logical, analytical. But then I really could not reconcile all the things that I love to do with a career choice. And so every week I wanted to do something different. By the time we got to the class where we had to pick our subjects, do we want to be an arts student, science, social sciences? I just had absolutely no idea. I had gone all over the place and I was so confused. Also because I thought that, whatever you studied was what you would practice for the rest of your life. Because that's what I saw with my parents. They studied engineering and they were engineers and that was it. And it was just too daunting to pick one thing that I'd do for the rest of my life. So eventually I picked medicine, which, I mean, my parents were like, are you sure? I said yes. So in my school, all the very, very smart girls go into the science classes. And I just thought, yeah, I'm smart, so I'll go into the science class. And I was good in some sciences, but I was also very squeamish. And so in the end, I did not pass all the papers I needed to pass to get admission for medicine. And so my mother asked me if I wanted to do the exams again, and try again for medicine. And I just felt that was a blessing in disguise because I was like, I knew in my heart of hearts that, I really didn't want to study medicine. So I said, no, I don't. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. So then we now started, researching, talking to people. I didn't want to do engineering because both my parents were engineers and it was the expected thing that, of course, all their children would be engineers, and we wanted to find our own path. So I spoke to a lecturer at the University of Lagos, and he was looking at my exam results. And he said, wow, you got an A in maths, you got an A in economics. Have you thought about studying economics? I said, no, economics is so boring in school. And he said, oh, maybe you had a bad teacher. He said, well, think of your first degree as just that, your first degree. And then you can go on and you can really find out what you're interested in doing. And then you can do that for your master's. So I thought, okay, yeah, why not? Because I really didn't have any other options at that point. So I did my exams again, studied economics, and then, so I was basically just trying out different things. I take classes here, classes there, and I happened to I signed up for a diploma in computer programming. This was 1993 or so, 1993. And so I learned to program in BASIC and in COBOL. And I loved it. Like, I really, really loved it. I was like, wow, this is fantastic. Unfortunately, I had already, applied to study economics. But if I had a chance to go back, I would have, opted for something, computer related. So I think for me, that was the first time that I really, got into computers. I started writing programs. I developed software for my parents' bookshop, to track inventory. So I saw how you could actually apply it to real life. It made sense to me. And then at the same time, I realized how important it was to have some kind of career, counseling or guidance or, exposure or mentoring. So I think all that kind of fed into my wanting to do what I'm doing with W.TEC.
So what were the circumstances for you to decide that, okay, it's now time for me to start at W.TEC?
Okay, so I had worked for a few years. I had worked in a non-profit. I had also done a lot of volunteer work. I had volunteered in technology centers. I was teaching people, different things. I had volunteered in a women's shelter, in their computer lab. And so at a point, I decided to start my own projects, and where I was teaching girls in a secondary school how to blog. This was like 2005, 2006, and I had just discovered blogging. So, and I think this is a good gateway technology. They can do it, and then there's the excitement of seeing your name in print. Like, oh, I typed this, oh, this is my name. And then maybe we could go from there to web design and then go on to other programming languages. So I started that, and I was blogging about that. And then one of my regular commenters said, well, I think this is a fantastic idea. there, if you're really going to do this, then I'll be happy to partner with you. And, which she did. So her organization, which was based in Oxford and also in South Africa, provided the blog that we use. They provided the hosting. They even provided some money as well. And so that was like my real first foray into developing a project, on my own, well, in partnership, with them. And then, seeing the impact on the girls. So even though my mission was just to teach the girls blogging to start off with, a lot of them were not confident using the computer, so they'd be like pecking. Then they would feel so frustrated, and I tell them, no, it's okay, it's fine, just keep on pecking, you'll get more comfortable. And then, I asked them to practice their blogging during the week. And then I found out that they weren't, because the computer lab was always locked up because it's, fancy equipment, and the school didn't want anything happening to it. I said, no, these computers are meant to be used. So I think that even had an effect on the other students as well. So that's how I started. It was really just a project. I was still working full-time at the time. And then while I was doing that project, when it was coming to an end, I was doing the report writing and everything. And then I saw an opportunity to apply for a grant. And so I just, I put together a proposal, I sent it off. And then to my shock, I was shortlisted and invited for a workshop in Uganda. So this was for all the shortlisted applicants. So I told my mom, I'm going to Uganda. She said, really? I said, yes. She said, who is organizing it? I said, I don't really know, but I'll meet them when I get there. So anyway, so I got to Uganda and I met, the other shortlisted nominees. And it was intimidating, and also it was it was a great feeling at the same time, because they all work for very established, organizations. And there was me, I was an individual. I didn't work in a non-profit, this was like my side thing. And so the workshop was 1 week of learning, of sharing, and then we were meant to go back and now, tweak our proposals, submit it again, and then they would pick the finalists, the people who would get the grants. And then, so I did all that. And a few weeks later, I got an email saying that I had been awarded a grant. And then I found out from one of the organizers that mine was actually the top grant, that application. So I was shocked, because I didn't have much of an experience in that field, but I felt proud that, okay, maybe my passion, for the work shone through. And I think that was what really gave me the confidence. And so I had this grant money. It was like a really ridiculously small amount of money. But that gave me the confidence to now resign from my job and say, okay, it's been great, but I have to go and fulfill my dreams. Yeah, so that's basically how I started. So that was end of 2007, and W.TEC, started formally in 2008.
Okay, so you have a grant, you've left your job.
Yeah.
What was the reaction of everyone around you? Are they like, is this girl crazy?
Yes, most of my friends thought so too. They knew I had an interest in that work, so they were not too surprised. But they were like, what are you going to do for money? And I said, oh, I'll figure it out. It'll sort itself out somehow. I always had this optimism, this confidence that things would just work out fine. My parents, they were civil servants, but they also had businesses on the side. And my mom in particular was, she was really encouraging. She said, yeah, you need to, pursue the things that you're interested in. What's the worst that could happen? If it doesn't work out, then you go back and get a job, So that was her attitude. So that really encouraged me, I knew that, I had my parents' support. And I was single at the time. I was still living at home. I didn't have bills to pay. So really, I think that's the best time to try anything like that, because if it doesn't work out, you always have something you can fall back on. So I was able to do that. And it was okay. I had my salary saved up. So really, I was funding it from my saved up salary. And occasionally I'd get donations from friends and family. So we kind of coasted through the first year, and then we had our grants as well. And then after the first year, then there was a recession, and then everything that I had hoped and dreamed of, that I would write all the other proposals I would write, I would be getting grants as easily as I got the first one. All that just crashed and burned. So no grants for like the first 3 years. We didn't get any grants at all. I mean, it was really difficult. So I was basically surviving on my saved up salary. I was very frugal, so I managed to stretch it out. We would do maybe like 1 or 2 projects a year. We would take loads of pictures, flood social media with the pictures. So people looking at it would think like, wow, these people are really doing a lot, you know. And, you know, yeah, so they were good projects. They were not, you know, so many. We basically just did what we could. And I applied for a few grants, well, quite a number of grants. Either I wouldn't hear anything back or I would get, you know, rejections. So after a while, I just stopped applying and just focused on doing the work with the resources that we had. And after about 3 years, then the funding now started coming in. And so it was easier. And I think in this space, there are lots of nonprofits in Nigeria. I think around the world anyway. And maybe in the 80s and the 90s, I think funding was a lot easier. I mean, I would hear stories of nonprofits getting like huge amounts, you know, and some of them never did anything with the money they got. So nonprofits also have a bad reputation as well here, you know, for getting grants and not doing anything with the money. So we all had all of that we were working up against. But I think for us, because we just, you know, focused on doing some work with whatever we had, and we were always posting it like all over social media, people started seeing what we were doing and thinking, okay, they've been, you know, quite consistent. And then we would get offers to, you know, support, usually in-kind support. I mean, we really wanted like cash support, but, you know, people say, oh, we'll donate this, we'll donate that, which is good, you know. So we would start with those partnerships. So we have some partnerships where, you know, we're getting funding from them now, but for the first few years, it was just that kind of in-kind, you know, we'll donate a facilitator for your program, we'll donate like snacks, you know, drinks, and yeah. So I think, you know, you just have to hang in there. You do have to have some resources or some access to some resources. I think you need to be quite, you know, frugal, or at least able to make things stretch. And you really need to document your work. You need to document every single thing you're doing. Sometimes, you know, as nonprofits, we do some work and we just don't think anything of it. Oh, I just, you know, did that, you know, yeah, that workshop, that's facilitation, that training, and you don't think anything of it. But, you know, we've learned to document everything, share it, and so I think all those things have helped.
How were you able to build the confidence in yourself or the skills that you required to be able to bring this project to life? Because like you mentioned, when you went to Uganda, you were like so intimidated. I think it's understandably, right? Because it's something that you've never done before. So how were you able to build that in yourself?
I have a tendency to jump into things like, I have an idea, I have a goal, I have a dream, I want to do this. And I try not to think about things too much, because I know that if I do, I will overanalyze it and I just won't do it. So if it's something I know I really want to do, I tend to just jump into it and then I figure things out later. So I had worked in a nonprofit, but working in a nonprofit is very different from actually running one. Exactly. So, and I found that out when I started running W.TEC. So it is basically a case of sink or swim. So I got in, I had my lovely strategic plan, and I had a fantastic project coordinator. And so together we were like a team, you know, supporting each other. You know, I would train her, and she was a very quick learner, and then, you know, she could now train, and we'd work on proposals together, and it was really fantastic. When I have things that I really didn't know about, there's a friend of mine, Wenga Chesson. He's, I don't know if you've heard of him, he's the executive director of a nonprofit called Paradigm Initiative. They used to be called Paradigm Initiative Nigeria, PIN, but now they're Paradigm Initiative. They work across Africa. So they basically do a lot of technology, training, empowering young people, but men and women, boys and girls, you know, empowering them with technology skills that they can use to lift themselves out of poverty. So he was already in this nonprofit space. So I would basically call him up a lot, like, Menga, how do you do this? I don't understand. How do you do this? How do you do this? How do you do this? So like that first year, I was always sending him emails, calling him, text messages, and he said, okay, you can do it like this, you can do it like this, try it like this, So that really helped, having someone who had sort of gone, before me. And then some things I just tried to figure out on my own. When we started, we put together an employee handbook because I wanted to do things properly and I wanted to have like structures and processes right from the start. So I basically gathered like employee handbooks from other organizations, read through them, and then my project coordinator and I basically wrote our own handbook. So we would basically look for resources where we didn't have it, and try and learn from them, adapt resources that were out there. And then I started taking courses, attending workshops. I think I was able to run on my own kind of intuitive, common sense for the first 5 years. And then at the 5-year point, I just felt like the organization had plateaued. And we needed money to be able to scale up and reach out to more girls and women, but we didn't have the money. And it just seemed like a dead end, and I didn't know how to break through it, because I was sure that if we were able to reach out to more girls and women, then that would also attract more funding and partnership. But I just didn't know, and I was quite frankly tired. I was really burnt out and tired. My fantastic project coordinator had left. She applied for a fellowship because she really wanted to, take her education further. So she got a fellowship in England and, left for that. And then from there, she did a master's and a PhD. And so that was great. I was very happy for her. But then I now had to look for a replacement. And so that was tough. That was when I now started experiencing all the human resource challenges that people, often talk about. People who would come in, people who didn't really buy into the vision, but they just wanted a job and they would do the barest minimum. And so I was doing a lot. And in the beginning, you are basically doing so much. You're wearing so many hats, writing proposals, training, HR, everything. Maybe sometimes even cleaning the office if you had to, doing the social media posts. And I was just burnt out and I was tired. And then I saw this this email for this course for social sector professionals. It was called the Social Sector Management course, run by Enterprise Development Center, EDC. They're quite big among entrepreneurs. I'm sure you'll hear about them if you haven't. And so it was a 6-month-long program, all about all the aspects of running a social enterprise. And I had actually seen that same course about 2 years before. And I just thought, I'm so busy. When am I going to have time for this course? So I just kind of pushed it away. But then when I saw it now, this was 2013, I was like, I think I need to do this because I've gotten to where I can with my own knowledge and, I don't have anything else to give. So I enrolled for the course and it was quite competitive to get in. But once I got in, honestly, I think for me, it changed everything. I saw that there were lots of things that we were doing right because we had a lot of processes. There were organizations I saw who didn't have a mission statement. They didn't have a vision statement. I was like, what? How are you running? So we had all those things in place. We had a lot. So I realized there are some things that we were doing well and we needed to step back and, acknowledge that, okay, you're doing a good job, And then I saw the areas where we were not doing as good a job and we needed to be more specific, like tracking our numbers, our impacts. We tried our best, but I saw in the ways that, you should put together your impact, your numbers, and not just talk about the numbers of people trained, which was what we were doing, but how the program had changed their lives and be able to tell a good story. And I wasn't sure that then I could really tell a good story. Maybe I was being dry in my delivery. So people just thought, oh, it's just some small project. So I learned the power of storytelling. Then, there were things I wasn't too sure about, like the taxes, regulatory requirements. We were paying our taxes because where we had our office, it was very open, and the tax officials used to go from office to office to office asking to see your tax receipt. And our very first week, maybe our second day in operation, while we were still unpacking, setting up the office, they came to ask for our tax receipt. And I said, oh, we just opened, as you can see. So they were like, okay, are you registered, to pay tax? I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So they said, okay, go to the nearest tax office. So that's how we, got started with that. So luckily, right from the start, we had always been paying our taxes. But I found out about different types of taxes and the ones we were exempt from, and, and then like the law in terms of non-profit law or aspects of the Constitution that affects, non-profits. And there was just so much I learned about HR, hiring rights. A lot of times you have problems with your staff because you don't even hire rights in the first place. So you can't just hire anyone off the street and then think, I'm going to turn them into a super employee. It doesn't work that way. So I learned so much. And the best thing about that program was, even though it was 6 months, it's not 6 months at a stretch. Each month you'd have 1 week of classes, so Monday to Friday. Then the remaining 3 weeks of the month, you now go and you put into practice everything you've learned. Then the next month, you're back again for 1 week of classes, and then you put into practice. So as you go along, you're putting into practice, the things you have learned. And they, and they spoke to us and let us know that it's not everything we learn that may apply to us, and we shouldn't try and do everything, because when you do that, a lot of times you're setting yourself up for failure, because realistically, by the time you get back, you have so much work to do. So they advise us to just pick like 1 or 2 things that really we think will make a difference in our organizations and focus on implementing those 1 or 2 things. And so that's what I started doing. And so that really, really helped. That really, really helped. And I think then by the end of the year, I was now nominated as an Ashoka Fellow. And so that just made me feel like on top of the world, like, okay, yes, I think I'm where I'm meant to be. Yeah, so yeah, it's a gradual process, but building the confidence means building your knowledge, building your experience, and you do that just incrementally. Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to start their own business?
Their own business, non-profit, or any kind of business?
Any kind of business.
Okay, any kind of business. I would say find something that you're interested in. You do need interest to support you and to sustain you through it. I mean, I'm not one of those people who thinks that you should always follow your passion, because you also need to be realistic, I think, and that's very easy to say, follow your dreams, follow your passion. And thankfully for me, it worked out, but it very easily could not have worked out, I think for me, it worked out because at least I had like a bank of resources to help me through like that initial 1 to 3 years where things were really tough. And I had, a network of like family and supporters who would ask how they could help. And then I also was persistent, because I very easily could have given up. Like at any point I could have said, this is too tough, I'm going back to get a 9 to 5, but I hung in there. So you have to have grit, not to sound so cliche, grits, but you do have to have some amount of persistence to stay in when it's tough. But you also, I think, need to be realistic and see when what you're trying to work on maybe is past the point of being saved. So thankfully, we were never at that point with W.TEC, but sometimes you have a business idea and it's just not doing well, and maybe you get to a point where you just need to shut it down. I think you need to know that, or you need to be able to identify that. But I would say, yeah, having a network of supporters, is helpful. Not so necessary, because when I started a nonprofit, as I said, there are lots of people who said it was a crazy idea. Yeah. So at least if you have the support of a few people who matter to you, that's good. Having some resources that you can use, you always need cash flow, is important. Having some interest in the idea, the business idea, whatever it is, that's very, very important. Being willing to be persistent, to be determined, go through tough times, and willing to learn as well. Thankfully, I had a board, so I started off with a board, and we'd have quarterly board meetings, and they were also able to give advice and guidance. And then I had my friend who had started a nonprofit, so he also gave advice. So I say, have people who you can turn to for advice, for support, who will tell you the truth. Have some money, that you can start off with, and have a lot of faith.
I have a bit of a cheeky question.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Do you think, what's your take on the boy child in all of this? Do you think that they are doing fine, that they don't need any saving or helping? Because I know that, I don't even know where I heard about this, but people were like, oh no, now everyone is really taking care of the women and so on. Like, what happened to the boy child? And
Yeah, I'm always like, yeah. Whatever, please. Yes, people tell me that all the time, like, oh, you're so sexist, you're only focused on the girls. What about the boys? What about the boys? I'm like, yeah, what about the boys? Like, we've had like hundreds of years, of discrimination, subjugation against girls and women. Now, maybe over the last, 20, 25 years, we've had, programs focused on, empowering girls, and now all of a sudden everyone feels so bad for the boys. I'm like, no, what all these programs are doing are trying to erase, years of discrimination, and I think that the boys are fine. I don't worry about the boys, and I think if you're passionate about the boys, then you can do something for the boys. But I really don't think that the boys are in any kind of crisis. That's my personal opinion.
okay. If you could give one piece of advice to women today, what would that be?
I would say, live your life as fully as you can. I don't want it to sound very cliche, but really, I mean, there's so many things that, I've experienced and gone through, and I realize that life is short. Life is shorter than you think. A lot of times we think, oh, we'll have like 80 years, 70, 80 years, maybe if we're lucky, 90, 100 years. But it's not always the case, life can go by so quickly. So I would say, identify the things that matter to you, and spend your life focusing on those things. If for you it's a family and children, that's fine, do that. If for you it's a career, that's fine. If you want to try and have the best of all the worlds, a family, children, career, then try and just do it. But know that you will have to maybe give up some things at a point in time, but just try and identify the things that matter most to you, and just live your life just trying to, embrace all those things and actualize your dreams.
Thank you so much for sharing.
All right, my pleasure.
Yeah, I have a few more
Okay,
questions. Thanks
great.
so much. Right now, you're also an entrepreneur. You have a bookshop.
Yes.
How do you manage both the non-profit and the bookshop?
Okay. Yeah, it's not easy. When we started the bookshop, like I mentioned, it was my sister and I think it really helps to have a co-founder, especially one who, shares, similar values with you, so that it makes the working relationship harmonious. Unfortunately, my sister passed away a few years ago. So that was a tough transition period, because then I was now the sole, I guess, manager of two different businesses, and very different businesses too. What I think has helped me is just being able to compartmentalize my life. So I have my bookshop days and I have my nonprofit days. And so when I'm at the nonprofit, I try and focus on just that and shut out anything bookshop related. It's not always possible. Sometimes you have to quickly answer a text message. I do that. But I try and focus on the nonprofits, on the days I'm there. And then on my bookshop days, I focus on the bookshop and try and shut everything out. And I try to now have another day that is just for me, so that I can just, rest and balance. My mother always says, do what you can, just do what you can. The work will always be there. The work will never finish. There'll always be lots of work to do. So I try to also, really consider that. Because I always have a tendency to want to try and finish everything on my to-do list before I rest for the day. But I think now I've come to a happy place where I realize that I'll always have lots of stuff on my to-do list. So I try and also have hours for myself. Like, okay, if I'm working from home, by 5 p.m. I'm done, and I'm done for the day. So I just try to have, these, pockets of time. Bookshop time, non-profit time, family time, me time. And I think having children has helped, actually, because I used to just work all the time. But I mean, I have really young children. My daughter is 4 and my son is 2. So sometimes I'm at home working and my daughter will come to me and like, Mommy, stop working, stop it, and she'll shut down my laptop, stop it, come and play with me. And that's it, and I have to go and play with her. Yeah. So that has actually helped me, have some sense of balance.
Oh wow, they're great coaches. Huh?
They are very good.
Yeah, and I thank you for sharing that, because I find this very valuable advice to come to the realization that everything on our to-do list we have put there.
Yes,
right.
That's
it's
true.
on no one else's to-do list. It's on ours.
Yeah.
And that is because we think it important enough to show up there.
Yeah.
So there's no one else that we are doing this for. Of course, there's the impact, but you will never run out of tasks because the mind is busy, and if you have a big purpose, the task will always be there.
That's so true. That's so true.
Did you ever? And I'm just curious, because from the social enterprise side, are there elements of a business model in your nonprofit?
Yeah. It's a good question. When I was doing that course at EDC, that was the first thing that they taught us, that a lot of you are running your nonprofit like it's a charity. It's not. It's a business. It's just that it's a business with social goals. So maybe the products you're selling is really a girl being able to go to school, or a girl having sanitary products, or or whatever, or a roof over someone's head. That's a product. It's not the same kind of product like you're selling a book or you're selling, clothes, but it's a product all the same. So you need to think of it as a business. So you have to make sure that you're running your programs profitably. So you have to think about revenue generation, whether that's from grants or whether that's from offering like services that, people will pay for. You have to make sure that when you do have your revenue, you're operating with a profit, at least break even at the very worst case scenario, so, and then you're running it with structures, with processes. Then for your staff, you're holding them accountable. You have job descriptions, you have KPIs. You make sure that everyone is doing what they're meant to be doing. So I think every aspect actually of running a non-profit, you can apply business principles to it. Yeah.
And did you ever go into, besides the grants, did you ever offer these services where schools would pay you consultancy fees?
Yes.
Are there elements of that as well?
Yes, we did. So we started off by offering a website development services. And so we did that, but that honestly wasn't very profitable because people would change their minds, and a job that we thought would take us 2 weeks could end up taking like 2 months, so that really didn't work. I think also we didn't know enough to have some definitions in place, like we can make so number of changes for you, we have to get it done with this amount of time. We didn't know enough to do that, so we were running at a loss. And then we started doing trainings for students. So the camp that we run, initially it was totally free, and we just looked for like funding to cover it. After about 3 years or so, we started charging a fee for it. We'd still look for sponsorship to cover a lot of the costs, but then also we charge a fee for that. And so we still charge a fee to date. And then we also get sponsorship to cover, maybe any outstanding costs. And then we offer consultancy as well. So we've worked with the Lagos State Ministry of Education as a delivery partner on one of their projects. They had this project last year, over the last 2-3 years, called Code Lagos. They were trying to teach 1 million Lagosians to code. And so we were a partner there, so we got paid for our services. We've also done some other consultancy services like that, and we've gotten paid for that. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, because especially in the first 3 years that you didn't get the grants, I always find if someone has the passion to tackle a social challenge, ecological challenge, to, of course, look at grants and try to get them, but look at what else can you do to sustain yourself, because that grit that you mentioned, that's part of it, right? If I develop a website and it can sustain me for a month, well, that's a month that I can continue also thinking about something else. So, so it's not this utter feeling of dependency on someone else's money, because you will always know that there are additional possibilities.
Exactly.
Right?
It's really important. And I think even when the grants start rolling in, you still want to also have other sources of income as well. For instance, some funders will only fund your projects. So they will not fund like salaries, you know, they don't want their money to go to brick and mortar. But you do need an office to operate from. So if no one is going to pay for it, how are you going to pay for it? So you need to think about creative ways that you can generate the income you need to pay for your office space, to pay your staff. You know, they're not going to work for free. So that's important. And then sometimes some people may disagree with particular funders' values. So for instance, there are certain companies that some grantees may be like, I don't like their business practices, you know, and I don't want to get money from them. So even though they're offering me money, I don't feel comfortable. It goes against our values. So I think, you know, there's some nonprofits that are not in the position to say no. They need the money. But it's nice when you have different sources of funding, so you can say, no, I really don't like their business practices. I don't want to be aligned with them, you know, and then you can turn it away. You need to get to a certain stage before you can do that, yeah.
Wow. What is your plan for scaling this? How is what's your model for growing that? Because I mean, there are a lot of women in the world. And, only a few of them, I assume, have the opportunity to attend the program as of now.
Yes.
So how can you reach more women?
So, okay, so our plans are to reach more women in Nigeria. I'm not even thinking about Africa because I think that there's a lot of work to do in Nigeria as it is. So what we're doing now is identifying partners in different states in Nigeria who we can work with. So for instance, I mentioned the camp that we are running and that started here in Lagos. It used to be for 1 week for 15 girls. Now this year we're reaching like about 150 girls in 4 states. And that's because we've identified organizations that we can partner with. So they're providing the venue, they are providing the facilitators, and then, so what we are doing is we're training the facilitators, they're doing the recruitment of the girls, and then we are providing some funding that we have been able to fundraise. And so by having those partners, it actually reduces the cost because, you know, there are things that we don't have to pay for. So right now we're in Lagos. We use a school in Lagos and they've been our partner from the beginning. So we're able to use their space, you know, rent-free. And then in Kwara State, we are partnering with a public school there. So we're also able to use their space rent-free as well. And in Anambra State, we're partnering with a public library. So we're able to use their space. So we're looking to identify, you know, other partners in other parts of the country. So ideally, if we can cover different geopolitical zones. So right now we're in Southwest, we're in North Central, and then we're in Southeast. So we are looking, we'd like to go to like the North, maybe Northeast, Northwest next. So our model is that each year we'd like to add like 1 new location to the camps. And so at least that way we can reach more girls. And then in each camp, we'll start small. So like start with maybe like about 15, 20 girls and then gradually increase it. So in Lagos this year, we had 50 girls in the camp. Wow. Yeah, I don't think we'll do more than 50 girls because there are also other social benefits of being in the camp. And the more girls you have, you kind of lose that feeling. So we're looking at a cap of 50 girls in each camp. Yeah. And then in the after-school clubs as well, yes. So we started off in Lagos, partnering with public schools in Lagos. We were doing 15 schools at a point. And then now we're in Kwara State as well. So we're partnering with the Ministry of Education there. So that's our model, to find partners in different locations, get the buy-in of the State Ministry of Education. They will now make some schools available to us. We ask for schools that have functional computer labs. We ask for them to take on some of the costs, so like electricity, power costs, those kinds of things, basic repairs of the computer system so that we don't have to provide that. And then they will help us source the facilitators. Then we train the facilitators and then maybe contribute to stipends, like transport stipends for the facilitators. So that has enabled us to grow, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, my pleasure.
More power to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. We need it. Thank you.